did last week and what you did your discussion board on. So the discussion board, right, number 9, somebody unmute and tell us what you thought, or maybe after reflecting on it more, feelings that you had, thoughts that you had about the activist Judy Human and what impact she has had on America globally with civil rights for people with disabilities.
Well, I'll speak. In looking at the documentary, it kind of turned the light on for me how we all seem to kind of overlook the disabled and the handicapped, or take our abilities to be able to dress ourselves, feed ourselves, and walk around for granted at times. And it kind of touched me a little bit when she was talking about how they sometimes feel less than a man or a woman, you know, not even recognized as a man or a woman, or even being humane. So that kind of had a little thought in my head. And then I was overjoyed when they got the Section 504 signed, and all the laws came into play for them. And then I thought that Judy herself done a fantastic job of orchestrating the whole thing, and organizing all of the sit-ins and the you know, just the different people coming together. So I thought she done a fantastic job for the disability and handicap community for the whole world.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? I know that was, like, of course, a great way, Miss Claybrook, blowing us out of the water with all the details. Somebody else, anything that really stood out to you, or that you want to bring out of the documentary that you either didn't know before, or that you really, you know, had an impact on you, or maybe you had a personal reason it resonated with you?
I thought the documentary was really good. It was eye-opening, like Miss Claybrook said. What really brought attention, like what I really just was like, wow, when they were all at the camp, and like you got to see like how they were interacting with the interviewer, and like he was asking them certain questions, and they all had a different feeling or a different memory that they wanted to share. And that was kind of deep, because when you think about, like, when you go to public places, like I think one of the people were like, when they were asked to be like pushed around on the elevator or whatever, they would say just go get the wheelchairs, and not actually recognize the people in it. So I just felt like that was kind of, you know, I see that a lot, but I don't really recognize how bad that is, and how we don't really pay attention to the human. Like, that's perfectly fine, that's them, but we just kind of discriminate. So I think that was pretty deep and eye-opening for me.
Right. Definitely, like what you said, even just calling someone the wheelchairs, or a group of people, right? So that is just, I don't know if Miss Claybrook meant this, but when she was talking about at the beginning also about the humanism being lost, and them not feeling like, right, themselves as a gender, a male or female. I don't know if you all picked up on it, but there was one huge part where some people might totally neglect this, but the part where they were talking about relationships, right? And actually like being sexually active and going to like a gynecologist and all of those pieces, right? Because again, what Megan and Miss Claybrook were just saying, right, is they often are just kind of pushed in the shadows, right? And they feel like either maybe people might not be attracted to them, or that they might never have, right, a sense of normalcy or a sense of like real community. So to get to see them interact both at the camp with interviewers, people coming in asking them things in the public eye, and with each other, right, was totally, again, like you both said, beautifully eye-opening. And I definitely, right, never have had to deal with any of those things before. Of course, I've had students, I've had people, and I was a exceptional learner teacher myself and got certified with it. But even still, there's still some things you just haven't thought of, or like, wow, I didn't realize how recent that was, right? That they were actually fighting for this right. And again, being a special education teacher, they call it exceptional learning teacher now, but like going into IEP meetings and actually seeing how much there still is not in place, and how much accommodations still are not made, or how much people will say, yes, I will do this, and don't do it, right? Or don't uphold, don't abide by it, just like they were showing in the video, right? even after the 70s, even after the 90s, when these laws were supposed to be signed in place, and we were joyful for them, right? But just like most groups who are oppressed, right, they might get rights, and it might seem amazing the day they get something. Both civil rights movement with African Americans, both women, right? Now we've been talking a lot about the Asian community and discrimination that they've been facing lately. But even though those people get rights, get voting rights, get accepted, right? Just like Judy Human was saying in that video, like, why should I be excited because I get to go to my own bathroom now, right? Like, it's like I should have already had these things. I shouldn't have had to fight just to have normalcy, right? So just thinking about them actually having to battle for that and argue and say, like, the president at the time, two of them, right, weren't paying attention to them. One was asking, is this worth it for everybody? Is this money going to be, I don't know. It's just so much. It perfectly translates to what we're going to discuss tonight with someone else. So I'm glad, you know, this did have an impact on y'all. Sometimes I'm very wary about showing a video or a documentary because I'm like, is this the best use of our time? But I don't usually show anything unless I feel really strongly about it. So hopefully, again, like most people were saying, right, it either was eye-opening for you or helped you have a different perspective, right? Or think, wow, there are some things I didn't even have to think about, right? That other people have to deal with on a daily basis. So, sorry. A few other people, what did you think about something specific from the documentary or something that it brought out for you?
The part that always comes back to me is how when they interviewed some of the kids who attended the camp, the summer camp or whatnot, I didn't expect them to get so, I guess, raw in the interviews when the kids talked about their other experiences, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know, sort of the typical, you know, experimental teenage behavior and whatnot, and that kind of...
Right, they're just normal human beings,
Yeah.
right? Everybody wants to experiment. Like the one guy was like, "Oh, I get to go smoke pot with the counselors," and then the other people were like, "Oh, we got crabs because we were all, you know, a little frisky or whatever," right?
Yeah.
But it was like fun, and they were like, "Oh, I missed my boyfriend from 1 week, our anniversary," so it was like cute, right? Just to see them have normal adventures, love, and to be able to talk about, right, how most people don't treat them like that in regular, even their own families. That was the hard part for me to hear when they were doing the interview around the table, and the one guy was asking them, right, like, oh, do some of your parents treat you more strictly, or do they, you know, let you do things? And they were like, no, they're scared, right, to let us experience life. They're afraid, like, how people are going to treat us in society. And I think like a lot of people might relate to that, right? Thinking like even in terms of like race, right now, everything that's been going on with this racial reckoning, right? A lot of people have not had to think about their own privileges, right? And so some families have to train their children from literally toddlers, right? You cannot go do this. You cannot run around in the store. You can't like go out in the street and have a hoodie up. People will assume things about you. People will stereotype you. People might, right, do like brutality upon you, and you can't get away with, right? You shouldn't even have to tell a child that, but it's very similar to some of their experiences, right? And their parents might have been trying to help them, shelter them, keep them safe, right? That's their ultimate goal. But it's just hearing it, like you said, Bruce, from their perspective, it was just very eye-opening and enlightening. So I'm glad some of y'all got that. And I want to pause for a moment and introduce you all to Miss Gonsalves. Our guest just came on. How are you tonight?
Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm so sorry I'm a little late. There was a lot of traffic coming from Franklin, so thank you for being so patient.
You're fine. We are so glad to have you tonight, and you're actually perfect on time. I knew they always get used to me harassing them about having to review their homework from last time and go through attendance. So that was all planned. So again, we are all so excited to have Miss Gonsalves here tonight, and thank you so much for coming and blessing us with your presence. So she and I have known each other for a while. We taught at 2 different charter schools here in Nashville. And now she has something really exciting that she's actively working on top of working full time, right? She was just talking about she just commuted from work. Now she's here in our class to talk to us, and she's going to graduate school for her master's in business, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So I asked her to come speak to you all tonight, and it directly translates to everything we've just been talking about the past couple of class meetings, because she is actually publishing her own book. So I'm going to call on a couple of people and we'll get y'all to interact. But Erin, what is like the essay genre that y'all have been talking about that you actually don't have to, y'all's class, write your essay on, but what have we been talking about? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. So the essay genre, anybody can answer this. What type of essay have we been talking about? Y'all are not actually going to have to write this one, but we've been talking about when there's a problem, you come up with a solution, and this is a specific type of essay or reading that we've been doing.
Action proposal, right?
Yeah, proposals. So, right, when you have an issue, right, or a problem, you can write something, right? And we've been reading a lot of different situations. You all just watched the documentary we were just reviewing, the Crip Camp Disability Revolution, that was produced by the Obamas from Netflix, and we all got to watch it on YouTube. So, right, that lady, Judy Human, she literally like proposed this giant thing that changed the face of disability rights in America. And so a lot of you, right, have been learning different topics, and we're going to talk about a topic tonight about an issue that Miss Gonsalves has. So she had found this issue, right, in her own life and in society and in her classroom. And so she has a really amazing children's book that she is working on, and it definitely fulfills all of the key things regarding proposals. So she's talking about a unique problem with a lack of representation in, again, her personal life when she was a child growing up, and then again in her professional life as a teacher. So really excited again to have her here tonight. And I know, like we've been talking about, right, y'all just watched the documentary on Netflix called Crip Camp. And so with civil rights, we just were reviewing that right before you came on. I know we've been talking a lot specifically with disability rights, civil rights, and we reviewed just a moment ago. I know in history, right, we talk all the time about isms like feminism, sexism, racism, right? But another ism that does not get enough attention here in America and globally is discrimination. And it is really called ableism. And that means favoring people, right, who are in they're able-bodied, right, over people who have disabilities. So the disabled community, we've been talking about the past couple of times in class, right, for centuries in our country and globally, have oftentimes been kind of put on the back burner, in the shadows, right, not respected at all, because their bodies, possibly their minds, right, just work differently, not wrong, not abnormally, just differently. But they may have been treated or discriminated, right, against and treated like they were abnormal or made to feel like they were. So they don't have as much access oftentimes to seeing themselves perhaps in books or on the screen. So it is a hugely important topic. And again, I'm so excited to have Ms. Gonsalves here tonight to speak to our 1020 class. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let her talk about what she has in the works.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Hansen, and thank you guys for having me. I know what it's like to be in class for a few hours a night, so I am right there with you. And I know what it's like to sit and listen to people talk all night. So I don't want that to be the case. I want you guys to unmute yourselves and ask questions or contribute in any way. This is definitely more of a conversation than it is me kind of talking to you. So just keep that in mind. Talk anytime, take yourself off mute anytime. So my name is Miss Gonsalves, and I was an elementary school teacher for about 5 years. I grew up in Connecticut. I went to UConn for undergrad. I went to Brown University for my first master's in education. And I'm here now in Nashville. I taught for 2 years here. And now I am getting my MBA, and I actually work in real estate. So it's completely different. Now, when I was a teacher, I realized that there were a lot of books that I could not find for my kids. So a lot of kids that I had were incredibly diverse. They come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, maybe different religions, obviously gender, weight, height, all those things make us diverse. And I felt like I could not find enough books for my kids. Have any of you guys tried to find a book growing up or even now and you felt like you couldn't really find one that spoke to you? Have any of you had an experience like that?
So this is kind of a weird response, but especially I used to go to Tennessee State like community college or whatnot in Nashville before I came to TSU, and there's a surprising lack of books on like sort of new age material, I guess. Books on like occultism or sort of modern day religions. You go to any normal bookstore and you can there's whole sections of that. But I always noticed that in sort of public school systems, there's a noticeable lack of content like that.
Thank you so much for sharing. You're right. And I, as a teacher, what happens is when you first get your classroom in the beginning of the school year, companies will just send you books. And so you don't really have this authority over choosing the books you want. And I didn't like that. So I had a student 2 years ago who actually has a physical disability. She was raised in and out of wheelchairs, and I actually was as well. So I have muscular dystrophy, and I grew up in and out of wheelchairs. And I have had so many surgeries, I cannot even tell you. I have broke my hip, a lot of different physical issues growing up. And so I never saw people or images of a disabled person. And so when I think of disabled people, and I think when a lot of people think of disabled people, they might not think of these really positive words. Like, what is something that, if someone says, what do you think of when you think of someone who's disabled? What do you guys think? What's a word that comes to mind? And it could be anything. I'm not judging at all. I'm not going to be offended. But if someone says, what's the first thing that you think of when you think of someone who's disabled? What are some words you might think of?
A word I think of, and I think it's a very harsh word that people use towards disabled people, is retarded.
Absolutely. That's a great one. Thank you for sharing that too, because you're right. That is a huge one that people use.
I know we talked about that last week, right? That literally used to be the terminology that was like acceptable in America when President Kennedy's sister had that procedure we talked about, right? And he changed all of those laws. That was literally what the law was called back then, before they actually changed it to like intellectual disability and things like that.
That is so wild and very true. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have a word?
Someone put in the chat, cripple. That was one reason I was like so hesitant about that documentary, because it's called Crip Camp. But then I was like, they're the ones speaking and they're the ones like in the video and advocating for it. So the title was a little problematic for me, but.
I actually started to ask people about, just because he was on crutches. Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that, Bruce. So when I had this idea of writing a book, I decided to start asking people in my life, friends, family, coworkers, classmates, what is a word that they think of when they think of someone who has a disability? And the words were not very positive. And that was fine, because that was kind of like data that I was collecting. And so when you think of someone with a disability, you don't think of an athlete. You might not think of someone who's stunningly beautiful. You might not think of someone who's a model. You might not think of someone who's funny and smart and caring, right? These are not words that we use to describe people with disabilities, but I know some of the best athletes in the world are absolutely disabled or paralyzed, right? They're in the Special Olympics. And there are so many beautiful people who are disabled and a lot of models who are disabled. And so that really challenged me to do something different. And I thought, well, what could I bring to the world? What could I do to bring my story to light? And my little student that I had who had a disability, I could never find a book for her with a child who was represented. And so I thought, well, maybe I can write my own book. So I am writing a story. It's called Emma Grace and the Red Party Dress. And it is actually about my second grade Valentine's Day party, where I had to tell my classmates about my disability, about muscular dystrophy. And I remember being petrified because it was the first day that I really had to tell all my classmates about it. And, people don't forget. I know that my classmates remembered that even up until we went to high school. So it was definitely a moment of vulnerability. And, but I felt beautiful in my red party dress that my mom bought me. And so it's not a book that is victimizing myself about having a disability. It's a book essentially just, hey, I grew up with muscular dystrophy. This is a moment in time that I remember, and that is that. And so I'm really excited to bring that book to life. My illustrator is phenomenal, and she is doing an incredible job with the illustrations. And I'm just really excited about it. And I hope that it touches some people's lives, and hopefully we'll bring more voices to the world, because I feel like we just don't have enough.
Yeah. So some of you might have some questions for her already. If so, feel free. And if not, we are going to get to experience something really unique tonight right afterwards. But first, we're going to open it up for some more questions for Ms. Gonsalves that you might have.
I'm sorry, your illustrator, do they have like a Instagram or like a Twitter or anything where they like post their artwork?
Yeah, she has. So she's also a photographer. This is actually the first book she's illustrating, which is really awesome. But her name is Jamie Bannon. And she's just phenomenal. I can show you some of the pictures that she's done so far, but I would look her up on LinkedIn. I would look her up. She definitely has an Instagram where she posts her phenomenal photographs. But this will be kind of her first big illustration project. So I'm so excited for her too, because this is going to be a really awesome opportunity for her to kind of show off her skills.
Before we go on, it's Jamie Bannon.
Jamie Bannon.
I was going to say, before we go on, most of y'all are doing so anyway, and you always do a good job with this, but I just wanted you to keep in mind, I never make you do anything for busy work. So please make sure you're taking notes, because you will be writing about this later. For your discussion board number 10. One piece, I don't know if you were going to mention, Ms. Gonsalves, but I know you were talking about like your inspiration, your childhood, and then of course with your students. But you had also mentioned, when we were talking a couple times now about this, about how you kind of got inspired by someone, where you were when the inspiration came about further, in an event that you had gone to plan or to learn about diversity. So if you want to speak a little bit about that too.
Yes, I would love to. When I was working at a school here in Nashville, I started to get really passionate about the books that we have in front of our kids. Why don't we have better books in front of our students? Why do kids hate reading so much? This is a problem. And what I realized was because we're not reading things that are exciting for us. And maybe if that little girl with the disability in my class had a book about a little girl in a wheelchair, she would feel so connected. She would want to read it. And I'm a huge believer in getting all my kids to love to read. So I applied to join a awesome kind of professional development weekend at Harvard, where all the teachers and all these teachers globally would come and start talking about the importance of diversity in books. We all brought a book with us. And so it was really amazing to see books from all over the world, essentially. But what always got me was that these books were primarily about how we are diverse with race, which is huge and so important. But there are so many ways in which we're diverse. We're diverse in our health, and we're diverse in just our height and our weight and the things that we love to do. And we're diverse in our talents and our skills. And I thought, oh my gosh, here are all these teachers all around the world, and we thought that we needed to bring books just about race. So he kind of started to talk about books, what does diversity mean? And so nobody knew I had a disability in the room, but I ended up sitting next to a published author, and I had no idea that she was a published author. But I kind of said to her, I think that we need more books about kids with disabilities, like kids who have hearing impairments or sight impairments, or kids who are in wheelchairs, and she said, I think that's a great idea. I just think it would be even more powerful if someone with a disability wrote one of those books. And she had no idea I had a disability. So I really felt like it was a universe thing or a God thing, whatever you believe in. And I just thought, oh, maybe I could write one. And so I started writing my book in the airport on the way home. And it was definitely an amazing moment. And I think that was the universe leading me down this road of maybe writing this book. Maybe people will want to read it and need it, you know?
And I love that she just went there, right, to be like not self-serving, just to help her students, right, to find more diverse literature for them. But then when she was there, kind of got the idea, right, that she was just going to go talk about these things and learn about these things for her students. But then was like, hey, there's this other diversity we also need to be talking about, right, with disabilities. And then the lady, again, like she said, didn't know she had a disability herself, but suggested, right, it would come off much more authentically if someone with a disability were writing and sharing their story. And then what Ms. Gonsalves has been talking about, right, about wanting the story to not be all about like victimization or like, oh, this is so sad, or this is just about civil rights, or this is just about history, right? But more, and not just about medicine or how the disability affects you, but just a everyday life, real life story, adventure, fun, beauty, like all of these things. So that is what she is doing. And I don't know, she sort of alluded to it when she was talking about meeting with the lady, but she actually wrote the one book that's pretty complete right now. They're like illustrating it and you're editing it, but she's also writing an entire series. That's the plan. So it'll be all about Emma Grace. And I know you and I talked last time about, right, when you were younger, that you didn't technically have like other people in your classes that had maybe diverse issues in terms of like disabilities, but that would be something you might be interested in incorporating, that Emma might, you know, meet other people that have like reading disabilities or like speech impediments or different things like that. So I don't know if you have it ready or if you want to go ahead and share some stuff. So we actually, again, get the very unique opportunity to see some of her illustrations, to see part of her book tonight. And my 1020 classes are the only people, other than people Miss Gonsalves has in her life, right, or her editor and illustrator, that have gotten to see this. So you might be, right, seeing something for the first time from a published author, and right.
You are so funny. So you're so sweet to speak so highly. You know, it's amazing, you guys, because when I first started writing this book, I had no idea what it even meant to write a book or to illustrate a book. Literally had no idea. And so it is a big job. And a lot of it was I just wrote the book and I thought my illustrator was just going to quickly throw some pictures together. And that is not the case. She is actually drawing every single one by hand and doing watercolors. And these are just sketches. So I want you to keep that in mind, that they're going to be even more beautiful than this, which is wild. But this is a little snippet of what some of the pictures are going to be like.
All right. So while she's screen sharing, I know a lot of you all are creative, right, and have your own ideas. So hopefully both what she was talking about, right, with representation, talking about your story, this will inspire you to want to write something, right, be a voice for someone, speak out about something you care about, or, right, maybe get involved with something creatively. How did you actually get in touch with your illustrator, Ms. Gonsalves, and also your editor?
I'm really, really big on believing, like, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Like, if you're meant to do something, like, you can make it happen and people are going to help you. And so I thought, I don't have money to write a book. Like, I just don't. Like, I don't come from money. I'm a teacher. I was on a teacher salary. Like, it's not possible. And honestly, LinkedIn was my very best friend. I started to post pictures, little snippets of like, hey guys, I really want to write a book. Is anyone willing to maybe like hand over their talents and maybe we can make it a team effort? And so many people came through for me. And my illustrator is actually a really good friend of our family. And I texted her one day and just said, hey, listen, like, I am looking for an illustrator. I know you're in the art world. Would you ever recommend someone? She said, oh, I want to do it. Are you kidding? I said, I don't have any money to give you. And she's like, I don't want any money. I'm going to draw the pictures for you and we're going to make it happen. And so I posted on LinkedIn a few months later, hey, I finished writing my story. Would love to have someone edit it. And some girl spoke out and said, hey, I will absolutely do it. And I would ask nothing more than just $50. And it was shocking. It was shocking that I have gotten this far without having to, come up with thousands of dollars like most authors have to. So it has been such a beautiful experience.
I know you said like the lady who was the illustrator, didn't you say like your mom and her had worked together or something?
Yes, my mom has nannied for her. So I never imagined years ago meeting her that one day we'd be partnering in writing this book. So it has been a really, really cool experience. Can you all see this picture?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. These are sketches, but essentially this is, I'll have to show you all a picture of me when I was, when on this day, because I do have a picture of me on this very day. And this is me obviously getting ready. I had really, really curly hair. That was my red dress. You can see she drew my casts that were wrapped around my legs. And my parents always made me feel so special no matter what. My dad also has muscular dystrophy. My brother has muscular dystrophy. 7 of my cousins have muscular dystrophy. My grandma has it. 3 of my aunts have it. So I have it worse out of everyone in the family. But it was great to kind of grow up and know that there were people in my life who also kind of could understand what I was going through. My dad was one of them. He always would transfer me from room to room and pretend like I was a princess. So that was kind of, he would lift me up and kind of help me travel because I couldn't walk, obviously. And then this is a sketch. Let me kind of see this one.
I know last time you were talking about like different pieces of art she's adding in to make it like come to life, like the adventure they tried to create. You said like princess,
Mhm.
like you were in like the little, what is it called? Like the Cinderella type, my brain went dead.
Yes. Yes, like a carriage. My wheelchair is gonna be like a carriage and
then
things
like
like
your
that.
cat had like a little crown and all those cute things. So I love all the creativity she's adding to it.
You're so sweet. This is, like I said, these are sketches, so they're gonna be so even more beautiful. But this is my best friend, Meg. She is still my best friend to this day. I am the maid of honor in her wedding in June. She was someone who has been 100% able-bodied. She was a basketball player and a soccer player and a swimmer and just always totally fine. And she loved me no matter what. And throughout my whole entire life, she was that person that made me feel beautiful, even in a wheelchair. And so it was a really great addition to the book because I knew that I wanted to highlight the relationship between someone who is physically able and someone who might not be, and what that could look like, and I think that there's such beauty in being able to, in a friendship or a relationship, be able to lift each other higher and kind of make up for those issues that you may have. And so in this picture, I was starting to get nervous because all my classmates were like running to the rug. And I kind of described it as it kind of being like a New York City street where everyone just seems to be able to walk fit perfectly and walk so quickly and no one's bumping into each other. And it's so organized, even though it doesn't look it, and how I could never do that with my legs. And so Meg made me feel like I was in a race car. Like she would always push me and pretend like we were, in a race. And she just always made things happy and exciting for me. Even though there were moments where I felt like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing that I can't do something so simple. So I will love her forever for that. And that's one of the sketches. And I would love to find you guys the picture of me when I was that age, if you all want to see. But in the meantime, does anyone have any questions, or is anyone wondering anything, or any comments or anything?
I have a question.
Yes.
Your book, is it for which age group of children? Is it for elementary or middle school or
That is
certain ages of children?
That's a great question. My book is going to be targeted towards first to fourth graders. So it's going to be more of a challenging read for a first grader. And then fourth grader is going to be more of like a fun, enjoying kind of read for them. That's a great question. So this is actually me when I was on that day. That was me, second grade. And then this is the sketch of kind of how we're forming what Emma Grace is going to look like.
So pretty.
So it is, you know, it's been such an incredible experience for me in the sense of just accepting, you know, when I see myself drawn with my legs bent, and when I see myself kind of drawn in that way, it brings back all these memories of me during those times and how insecure I felt. And I think my journey of self-love has been a very long one. So if anyone is struggling with that, just know there's so many people struggle with that, whether or not you have something like I do or not. And so it's been a really kind of beautiful experience of just seeing myself drawn like that and just be willing to accept it and love it and then show the world it. That's kind of where I'm at. Like hopefully the world is gonna see this and just to make sure that I'm letting kids know that I love who I am no matter what.
I know you said that was like a process though, that even like the illustrator had to say, hey, why don't you add like a picture of you, like either how it was to get out of bed or how it was to go down the stairs. And you were saying like at first you were really uncomfortable. You were like, I don't know about like if I want to see that, or like that aspect of myself that I tried. You were like talking about how you wanted to hide your legs always and things like that. So I know now you said that kind of made you come out of your shell. But I remember you showing me that illustration last time where you were like laying in the bed and then you were like, oh no, I actually need you to make this like more crooked or the toes like this way to be vulnerable.
Yes, I think that's been really wild. I think growing up, like, I don't have any pictures of my whole entire body. I never had a full length mirror. I still don't to this day. And that's not because I'm trying to disregard my body, but it's just been such a difficult and long journey of just saying like, hey, yeah, I walk with a limp. My legs are a little bit funky. I have scars all over my legs. Like, that's okay. But I'm not ready to view that 24/7 while I'm in my bedroom, right? And so it's been a long journey of that. And I think I have to accept that that's okay. And everyone goes through this self-love journey, especially with social media, where it just, these ridiculous images that we're bombarded with all the time. And so when we were drawing these pictures, my illustrator drew my feet wrapped in my cast with my toes sticking out, and they were straight. And I had to come up with the courage of like, hey, I didn't have straight toes. They actually were bent and I had to get them fixed when I was older, but let's be authentic and let's draw them crooked because that's what it was. And it has been, you know, I guess I didn't know that it was going to be so hard for me to be able to see these illustrations, but it's been a really beautiful journey of healing, I think.
And I think that is so powerful, right? Again, showing that she has gone through this transformative journey, all these different surgeries, and then bravely like talking about it, right? Both from not a victimization role, but just like, this is life. This is what I went through. These are my experiences. These were happy days. These were like the real life, everyday situations I had to deal with. I know you were talking about just like in general, still things that you have to think about, right? That we might take for granted, like going into certain restaurants, going to the beach. If you want to speak to some of those type situations.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, I think, you know, it's funny because when you don't have a perspective, it's so hard to see it every day. So growing up, I was obviously very much aware of places I could go and things I could do. And I just assumed other people would just know. But it really took me a long time to think, oh, like this person's not going to understand because they've never gone through that. So my family was always wonderful. And my friends who are in my life now, family who's in my life, they get it. But growing up, I remember when I was in wheelchairs and things like that, you know, I couldn't go to certain restaurants because they might have stairs going up to the restaurant, or the parking might be far away, or there might be like tons of gravel instead of a pavement. and how was I going to get my wheelchair? And the beach is my favorite place in the world. And I remember one weekend, my mom wanting to go, and I was like, I don't think that's even possible. How am I going to get my wheelchair there? You can't put a wheelchair in the sand. And it just was, it was always really, interesting to kind of see the world in that way. And one of my really good friends now, when we first started, when we first met and started to hang out and become friends, she would always say, hey, like, let's quickly go here. And in my mind, I was like, okay, where is that restaurant? Where is that store? What kind of shoes should I be wearing? I'm not very good at like random plans. Maybe some of your friends, will say, hey, let's go to the restaurant, and then we'll stop at this concert, or we'll go here, we'll go there. I can't do that because I don't know. I mean, am I going to be able to keep up with everyone? Am I going to be able to, walk on that certain terrain, or what shoes should I wear? And so it definitely is a different world where I'm kind of forced to constantly be thinking about my body, about what's going to be best for me with my legs and just with my health and all of that. So it's been kind of cool to teach people in my life, like, hey, don't spring, like, you cannot spring that on me, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And I have to make sure I'm ready, and that my body can do what y'all want to do.
I know another piece you were talking about, even as like supportive as your family was, and now how you were talking about tonight with us about how many of them also had the same disability as you.
Mm-hmm.
They were always like really trying to help support you, but you were even mentioning like the part about the stairs, and like you said that y'all lived in like an older house, so just how difficult, even in a home that was so supportive with your family, even just like regular everyday stuff at your house was difficult to deal with.
Yes. I was talking to my mom actually the other day and said, what would you have done differently if you knew that I was going to be born this way? Like, what would you have changed? And she said that they would not have bought the house that we have. It is a beautiful house. We bought it when it was up for foreclosure. It was absolutely horrid, to be honest with you. It was like dilapidated, basically, but it was in a wonderful town. And so my parents didn't really have much money. They bought it. They decided it was going to be a big house that they would flip, not even realizing that here I was going to come, right, needing all this extra physical health attention. And so my parents, just by happenstance, decided to put my room on the 3rd floor. So there's 2 staircases going up. Oh my Lord, my whole entire life, I had to learn how to go down on my booty down the stairs. I had to learn, best ways of, like, if I had to go to the bathroom, like, how can I get down really quickly? So my parents just always said, if we could go back, we would have had your room on the 1st floor, or have picked like a 1-story home. So when I buy my first house one day, and when I get married, that's going to have to be a conversation I have with my future husband of, hey, like, you might have these dreams of having this giant 4-story home. I can't have that. I'm going to have a 1-floor home. I won't be able to carry my babies up and down 2-3 flights of stairs. I won't be able to carry laundry baskets up 2-3 flights of stairs. And that's just my reality. And so that has, those little things that we might take for granted. Like if you're late for school, you're running all the way down the stairs. Could never have happened for me. And so, yeah, I think it's like those little daily things that you just take for granted that other people really have to plan out. Yeah, so that was really cool to kind of hear my mom say that.
I remember your story of that, but then when I was preparing for class and they had been watching that documentary, there was a guy who was like really passionate, wanting to go protest in New York. And before, right, what exactly they were protesting for was to change the laws, to change the policies, to make things more accessible for everyone, right, and for the disabled community. And so he was so passionate to go protest to get those things changed that they didn't have any ramps or any way for him to get down the stairs or up the stairs for the subway. And so he literally had to like get out of his wheelchair, drag himself and his wheelchair all by himself, and just thinking about like the tenacity, just the perseverance people have to go through that other people, right, might be just lazy or not think about or just take for granted. And so I think another thing you brought up that was really profound to me was about like never even giving yourself as a child excuses, or like you were like, no, I don't want different things. So if you want to talk about that some.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to have a victim mentality. It's very easy to say, oh, I was born in this situation, so that sucks. And I felt that a lot growing up. I was pretty miserable to be around when I was a little kid. I cried all the time. I was so upset with my body. I was so upset with what God gave me. I hated who I was. And so I definitely was not like an awesome, loving child for a few years. But what I never did was give myself an excuse. And so there were days where I would come out of the hospital with like iron rods coming out of my feet, and I would be crying. And my mom was like, you're fine. You've got legs. You're lucky you've got legs to put rods in. And that was just always her mentality. And so I think growing up, I kind of became very strong in that way, of, you know what, yes, I have this. And yes, there are some days where it really sucks more than others. But at the end of the day, I have two legs. I'm able to walk. It might be differently, but I'm able to walk, and I'm able to use my voice. And I have all these other talents that I have as well. I'm trying to think of what else you said, Ms. Hansen, about what I was saying last time.
All the jewels of things we've talked about, and like
I know
to experience it. So I know even like now you were talking about how you just started going to like workouts and physical therapy and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think a lot of times people will say to me, oh, well, don't push yourself. I mean, I know that you're different, you have a disability, but I don't think like that. I think I don't care if I have a disability. I don't care if I have an elephant trunk coming out of my face. Like, there are things you can do and things that you got to push yourself in. And so I started to see a personal trainer, and I went to her and I was like, I might not be able to do a push-up like somebody else, but I'm going to be doing a push-up. So we would just wrap like rubber bands around my hips. And that's how, it would kind of stabilize my core. That's how I would be able to do a push-up. I'm not able to run on a treadmill, but I'll be on Stairmaster, right? So I tell her all the time, never let me say no. You just have to adapt. And I think that's kind of what life's been for me, like not making up excuses, but just adapting. And I think that we need more role models or more people who can say, hey, life's really hard and life kind of sucks, but hey, guess what? Like, you can push through and be a rock star, no matter what the universe has kind of thrown your way. And I'm really grateful for those lessons that were kind of instilled in me at a young age.
I love that you're talking about, like, right, the book, obviously you wanted it to be representative for your community, for your students, for yourself, and like things that were absent when you were younger that you might have wanted in literature or media. But that you're also like wanting to instill perseverance and wanting them to see that like they can represent in their community for different things. And I think the empathy piece is so important right now, particularly with everything that's been going on, right, with 2020 and now like with the ongoing pandemic and different people from different socioeconomic classes, right, and people just having to think outside of their comfort zone and think like, this doesn't affect me, but it's still important, right? Policies, voting, all of these different things. We just have to start thinking about other human beings, not just ourselves. Right. So again, like her literature that she's creating is so amazing for students that will be up and coming, maybe some of your own like children, maybe some of your own siblings or cousins or something, right? You could be like, I talked to Miss Gonsalves before she was famous, right? Kind of like the Vashti Harrison that makes the Little Leaders books, or like Magic School Bus or something. She'll be a famous series writer one day.
Oh my Lord. I can only hope so, girl. I can only hope so. Yeah. That would be awesome.
She's such a kind-hearted person and always was like so amazing. She had like the little second graders like just fawning after her, wanting to come into class. Most kids are like screaming, not wanting to leave their moms at that age. And they were like, Miss G. So
you're so sweet.
They were running away from me, y'all. You know it. I'm just kidding.
Stop it. No, oh my gosh. Yeah, I love teaching. I miss it. I loved my babies, but it is cool to kind of at an older age say like, hey, I actually have other really cool talents that could be of an asset somewhere else. So that's been a cool journey too. You just never stop learning, I guess. But thank you guys so much for listening, and when Miss Hanson told me she wanted me to come, I was like, do people really care and want to hear about this? So thank you, even if you're just pretending to hear and listen. I'm so appreciative. And I just thank you guys so much.
This class is usually pretty honest. They'll like tell it like it is. So
Love it.
yeah, but definitely, I think, again, like I've mentioned over and over, like it's so important for representation that she's bringing to literature, but just thinking like of representation that needs to occur, right? Both in media, with television, with movies. Think about like how many roles you have seen, not that many, right? Of people actually portraying disabled people on television shows, movies. I know when I was younger, right, watching the movie Rain Man, and Dustin Hoffman, right, he had autism, and he does not actually have autism, right? So it's not as authentic if it's not someone that actually knows the story, actually going through the experience. They're actually an actor, right? Putting on a show, acting like they have it. So like television shows like Breaking Bad, the son, right? He had cerebral palsy, and he really did have that. And then in Glee, the little girl, Becky, she had a disability, right? And she really did. But then the boy in the wheelchair did not. So it just speaks so much more to if someone really could do it, right? And it's their experience, they can really bring more authenticity, heart to the role. Why not, right? Allow them to. I think, again, something we talk about all the time with race and even gender, right? But again, something we need to just highlight even more, are disabilities and people, right? Just having a whole life, not just focusing only on their disability, but like all the different things they can do and that they persevere through, regardless of what they are limited with.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to put it, Ms. Hanson. Does
All right.
anybody have any other?
I'm gonna shut up again, and y'all ask.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, does anyone have any other questions or comments or anything I can answer for you? Or
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about like your future plans, what you plan to do after you're finished with this book, and what else you're going to write?
Oh, I think that's awesome. Thanks, Erin. Gosh, to be honest, I didn't even think I was gonna make it this far. Wow. So with this book, I really want it to be a journey of like me marketing it. And so a lot of people have been saying, when you write this book, just give it to a publishing company and they'll do the rest. It means so much to me. I don't even want to let other people do that. So when I publish this book, I'm going to be traveling, hopefully to bookstores and whoever will have me in schools and be in hospitals and be reading this book to kids. And so we'll see how that goes, Erin. And I'm hoping that people will buy the book or will like to listen to it. And then if I feel like I have a good audience and people really liked it and care about it, then my second book is going to be Emma Grace and the Fixer Upper. And it's going to be all about the house that I grew up in and how I spent every single weekend at Home Depot with my dad. And we would buy whatever we could afford to fix up the house. And I slept on a mattress in the living room for like the first few years. I didn't even have a bed. We didn't have bedrooms, but they did that just so that my siblings and I could be in a great town for education, because my parents did not go to college. So I also want to talk about that. So every book is going to highlight my disability, but I never want the whole book to just be, oh, it's her being sad about her MD. So that's the goal. And then if it does really well, then I'll write another one and that would be so fun. But that's a really great question and one that I can only hope will come true, Erin.
Someone else in the chat said, did you mention or do you really care passionately about, are there any disability laws or reforms that you're in favor of or that you would want to change?
Oh my gosh, I get very upset about handicap parking. So I don't, when you first look at me, you won't say, oh, wow, she's disabled. And that happens to a lot of people. Obviously, when you're in a wheelchair, you might, people might just obviously will be like, oh yeah, she's disabled. But sometimes I'm not in a wheelchair, but I do have a handicap sticker and I have a permanent one. And it's as simple as parking close to the grocery store. So when I wheel out my cart, I'm not having to walk a mile to take out all my groceries. Well, I find that a lot of people don't assume people are going to need a handicap spot. So they might throw their carts there. instead of walking it to where they need to go. Or a lot of trucks will park in the handicap spot because they think, oh, no one's going to be parking here. So there are times where I get so frustrated, like, oh man, I really need that handicap spot. That would have been really helpful for me. And so I would love to advocate more for that. I would love to advocate more for handicap accessibility in places we don't always think of. There are some times, like today I went to a restaurant. I actually took, I'm a recruiter at a mortgage company, and I took out a candidate that I've been talking to, and the table was up on the second floor. We had to walk up 26 stairs, and I am in my brand new little wedges that Lord knows I cannot be wearing, and they're slippery, and I'm trying to haul my booty up to 26. I just thought, oh my goodness, 26, what would they have done if they, if I was in a wheelchair? I could not have been getting up 26 stairs. But people just don't always think about that when they're drawing out plans for a building, especially in an old school town like Franklin, or kind of an older historical building, right? They're not thinking about things like that. So I was worried the whole entire lunch. I thought, Lord, please do not make me fall on the way out of here. And that, I'm sure my candidate didn't even think twice about those stairs. So definitely making things more handicap accessible would be awesome. That's a great question.
I'm like the fan of crickets to make people awkwardly ask more questions. It's okay.
Well, I don't have a question. I have a comment, I guess you could say. I enjoyed hearing your story. And like in the beginning, when you were stating that you were upset about there not being enough books for handicapped children to read, as far as your book, I hope there's not enough books for handicaps to read. I hope it sells just.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That is so wonderful. And I completely agree. And even if it's not my book, maybe my book will inspire someone else to write a better one. And that is fine with me. But I just hope that, when I have children one day, it's a 50% chance that they will have it. And if they do, I can only hope that I can fill my bookshelf with books that will make my little girl or boy feel loved and seen. And that's kind of, that's the whole point. I wonder if I would have loved myself sooner in life if I saw versions of myself in the media that were positive, right? So not just someone struggling in a wheelchair, but hey, this person's a news anchor and they just happen to be in a wheelchair, or this person's a model and they just happen to have a limp or whatever. But those things were not seen. And so I just hope that my kids grow up seeing versions of whoever they are.
And I'm sorry, I have the memory of a goldfish, but what was the title of the book title again?
It's called Emma Grace in the Red Party Dress.
Just writing that down so I can keep an eye out for it.
You're so wonderful. Thank you so much.
You said you're trying to release it in the fall, right?
I would love to. It has been, I know I hinted at this, but it has been a journey. And my illustrator is phenomenal. She has such an artistic mind. And she says, oh, you know what? We actually will need a graphic designer to look at this. Why? And she's like, well, when you put the text on a page, if I'm drawing it to scale, we need to know where the words are going to go. I'm like, what? I would have just slapped that on there. Like I never would have known. And there's just so much that goes on that you don't even think of. And we actually looked at examples of books. She and I went to the bookstore and just sat for hours one day and just looked at books. And we're like, what do we like and what do we not like? And so many books that you'll read and maybe the text is too small, or they have a black background and like you can barely see the text, or it's funky. So we're learning a lot about what we want it to look like. And we also are building a website and an Instagram and try to, get that marketing going. So if any of you guys are good at marketing, shoot me an email. Would love to have your ideas. Would love that, because Lord knows what I'm doing with that. So hopefully you guys, this works out. One day when it's in the bookstore, it was a journey to get there. So but thank you guys so much. This is such a wonderful experience for me. I actually stopped writing this book. I started writing this book about 2.5 years ago. And I thought, this is so stupid. No one's ever going to read this. I'm embarrassed. This is the dumbest idea I've ever had in my life. And I stopped writing it. And then I actually almost deleted the whole book because I was going through my Google Drive one day and I was like, okay, I'm never going to look at this book again. I'm humiliated that I even thought I could write this. And then something just, I think maybe it was that student that I had, I don't know, Jesus himself came down in person and was like, girl. But for some reason, I felt like I had to write it again. So if you think you have an idea and you think it's stupid or you're doubting yourself, please don't. There are people out there who are going to think it is the best idea ever. So please keep that in mind.
Well, again, thank you so much. We could not be happier that you took the time after work, a full day of work, and what you had to go through interviewing someone as well. So thank you again, and rushing through traffic to get here. We are going to give them a little bit of some silent time, just to have silent, sacred work time to work on the discussion board that's about you in your honor.
That is so great. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. It's so wonderful and so kind. I'm like sweating because I'm like nervous to even be with you guys. Thank you for letting me hear. Thank you for letting me go into your space of learning and for just listening to me. That means the world. Thank you so much, Ms. Hansen. And if anybody has any questions, Ms. Hansen, you have my email, right?
Yes, I will put it in the chat, or you can put it in the chat too. And they, some of them have brilliant ideas and they might be emailing you all on their own about marketing or art or creative.
Good. Oh my gosh.
All kinds of ideas.
Yes. I mean, you guys nowadays are like gurus with social media. Like I post once a year. So if you guys have any ideas, let me know.
And it's always the most gorgeous post.
Stop it.
With your cute dog and you and your boyfriend, y'all are adorable.
Oh my gosh, you are the best. Well, thank you guys so much, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep working hard in school. I know night classes are tough. I go through them too, but it is all going to be worth it. I pinky promise y'all. And just keep working hard.
They are the best.
Thank you so much. I know. I can tell. I want to stay here. Thank you guys, and I will talk soon. Okay, email me if you have anything you want to talk about.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care of yourself. Good luck on everything.
All right. So it is 6:38. Let's go to 6:43. Just take a moment to just breathe and take a break. And then we'll come back and start working on that discussion board. So you can mute yourself, turn your video off, whatever you need. All right, so let's go ahead and come back. So now I want you to go ahead and go into content, and I'm going to make sure it is visible for you. Go to week 9 and go to discussion board number 10. So after hearing from the speaker, author Emma Gonsalves, use the paragraph method and reflect about what inspired her to propose her children's book a few years ago. And then obviously, right, when you explain, expand, or when you transition, you can talk about like what you thought or other things that you got out of it as well. So I'm going to give you 30 minutes to get that paragraph done and get it submitted. And hopefully you'll get done in like 15, 20, maybe even, and then you could go ahead and reply to another person and knock this one out entirely. So you have until 7:13. Go ahead and go into content, go to week 9, and go to discussion board number 10. All right, let's go ahead and come back. So hopefully that was really easy, right? You took lots of notes during her speech, and you were able to successfully write your paragraph. And if you didn't get a chance to submit it or go reply to somebody else, get that knocked out quickly. All right, so now we're going to do what I like to call a little bit of a marathon. We are going to do the content together for discussion board number 11. So I'm going to set an alarm for us, and we are going to go until 7:43, but everyone pay very close attention because this is going to directly help you do discussion board number 11. And then I have a little surprise for you. Discussion board number 11 will be your last discussion board for the semester for my class. I've cut discussion board number 12. So exciting. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There's a lot of information we're going to cover for this discussion board. So let's go ahead and go into content and go to discussion board number 11 under week 9. Because I want you to be able to see everything, all the links and everything, but I'm also going to share it with you as we go. So part A and part B are discussion board number 11. And it was already like that, but you're going to have to actually read even less than what you're going to have to do and respond to even less. I even cut some of discussion board number 11, what you were going to have to do. So part A for discussion board number 11, on Inauguration Day 2021, right? Many news outlets were focused on former politicians, presidents' fashionable attire, right? And possibly attempted unity, right? Bipartisanship with just literally fashion sense. So if you don't know about that or what they were actually doing, right, Republican is usually represented by red and Democrat is usually represented by blue. And so they tried to throw that out, right? A lot of people were wearing purple and burgundy purposefully. And Dr. Jill Biden, she actually wore that night later this 50 state flowers on her handmade like jacket, and she had a coat to represent all of the states, along with this Benjamin Franklin quote about education, because she is a college English professor. So if you're not familiar with that, just to give you a quick glimpse, or if you don't care about fashion or anything, that was what they were attempting with some symbolism. Again, if you're not familiar with purple, right, it's usually either regal royalty symbolism, or it was known by suffragettes or women, right, trying to fight for the vote. That was a color that they would wear to symbolize unity. So that was what a lot of the politicians, both Miss Clinton, Miss Obama, Kamala Harris, and lots of the different relatives were wearing. Again, Dr. Jill Biden, right, she had on the coat the night when they did the celebration that had all the 50 state flowers on it. And then again, inside it, there was a quote by Benjamin Franklin about, let's go. So it says, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So that is what those parts are talking about in the discussion board. But also on that day, right, there were a lot of other important things that happened other than just getting a new presidency, right, going through this traumatic pandemic. Lots of people, right, go to inaugurations every year, and that was not allowed this year, right? It was very, very different. People were just having to watch everything on the news. So again, there were other things to focus on, like the amazing poet laureate, right, who represented as a young Black female. And what you might not have known, though, is that Amanda Gorman, she had to develop a solution or a proposal to a problem that she had. So you might have been very familiar, got to see all of those amazing words that she spoke on that day, got to hear how articulate she was, just so much symbolism about the history of our country, about injustice, about moving forward, about democracy, patriotism, moving on in spite of those things, even if you weren't respected, even if you were discriminated against. But again, what you might not have known is that she had a speech impediment growing up. And so she had to overcome her own speech impediment as recent as college. I think she's, I don't want to say her age wrong. I think she's maybe like 21, 22 now. So she's graduated from college. But again, when she delivered her inaugural poem, you never would have indicated or known, right, that she had a disability, a speech impediment of her own. So people were, right, commending her left and right, all these famous composers and poets, and even like the playwright Lin-Manuel that did Hamilton said it was like perfectly written, perfectly spoken. But that's something that, right, she has poise, she has grace, she has perfect speech, but it's something that she had to struggle with. And so she really struggled with her speech impediment. And she said herself that she was proud to be in the speech difficulty club. And she actually said this to President Biden because he also has a speech impediment, and Maya Angelou, who, right, another amazing poet who also spoke at a presidential inauguration. And she was doing tons of interviews and nobody could believe, right, that she had a speech impediment. There was no indication of that. And she, right, said that she had these things going on. And then it, again, just like what Miss Gonsalves was talking about tonight, right, it inspires other people who might have issues, who might have stutters, to feel represented, right? Like, oh, wow, you struggled through this. So she said she tackled it through different writing strategies to tackle her own speech impediment. Anderson Cooper, who was interviewing her, said that he also had a slight stutter as a child. And then Joe Biden, a lot of people know that he has a stutter himself. So for her speech impediment, she said it was often like dropping a whole swath of letters in the alphabet. So for most of her life, until 2 or maybe 3 years ago, she couldn't say the letter R. And so even to this day, she said she really struggled with it. And so it didn't affect, she didn't let it affect, right, the words that she chose for the inaugural speech as the Poet Youth Laureate for The Hill We Climb, now the very famous inaugural poem that she did. And she used rise over and over and over, even though she struggled with that letter for her own speech impediment. So she said she used writing as a form of self-expression to get her words on the page, but also kind of like a butterfly, right? Let it metamorphosize into speech pathology. And so she said the more she actually practiced reciting words and the more she practiced spoken word with that tradition, right, of speaking out, of being bold, the more she was able to teach herself to pronounce certain letters that she had struggled with her own speech impediment. So sometimes writing and speaking, even though you may hate it, y'all, for English, can help you, right, overcome things. I know my grandfather from Michigan and my aunt, they were in something called Toastmasters, and it's literally this club, for lack of a better word, that you practice giving speeches, public speeches in. People who are nervous, right, and have to do this, they often do stuff like that. So she talked about, again, how she used to sing the song from Hamilton to also help with her speaking. So, because it continuously says Aaron Burr, sir, and she struggled with that R, right? So, packing your biggest difficulty sometimes, if you practice it over and over and over and over, right, you can overcome things. I know my mentor, my college, middle school and then college English professor, who gave me my first job ever teaching. He is dyslexic, but he specifically went into teaching English because he wanted to overcome that and help other people who struggled. His like biggest things he was great at were music and math, but he was like, that was something I wouldn't have had to work at or struggle with. So I wanted to help people. So I think it's really impactful, right? When people struggle with something, but they continue and they persist. And sometimes you never overcome it, right? It sounds like something that she has gotten a grasp of, coped with by practicing public speaking, right? And songs and practicing the actual letters she struggles with. But again, you wouldn't have ever been able to tell it in her beautiful poem. All right. So again, this is part A on discussion board. So hopefully you have a good understanding, right, of how she overcame her problem with a solution. All right. So again, that was poet youth laureate Amanda Gorman, and she gave her speech, or poem rather, recitation at the inauguration 2021 of Joe Biden. So again, to transition, President Joe Biden himself is also part of this discussion board number 11, part A. And so he also, like I said, struggled with stuttering. I know I had a huge, I don't know if I can vote for this dude, because I I'm not a person that just goes with party just because, right? So you can tell a lot of things I think and opinions and everything, right? But I had huge issues just with different things I'd heard, right, about policies he had upheld, being disrespectful to multiple different women. I'd heard different things he had said or done, said racist connotations, direct things, right, about integrating schools, buses, all kind of things like that. So I had huge issues, even though I had issues with the current administration, right? But I remember one specific thing he said in an interview, talking about his mom defending him to a teacher who had actually made fun of his stutter in school. And then I saw him kind of encouraging the student during the pandemic who was struggling with online Zoom classes. They never wanted to unmute. And I actually have a student like that this semester in one of my classes. And she told me, right, she also struggles with a speech impediment. So I just let her type in the chat and she never has to unmute either, right? Because some people have a reason why they're doing things. You can't just assume they don't want to participate or they're lazy or whatever. So anyway, that kind of gave me a little bit okay, maybe there's some positivity around him. But again, he also, since he struggled with this as a child, he created a solution, right, to hopefully give representation to other people who struggle with stuttering like he did. And he created the Stuttering Foundation. And so again, just some of the different pieces he'll talk about here. I'm not going to make you read all of this, but he also supports Stuttering Awareness Week and gives different speeches. And you can actually hear his stutter come out sometimes in different speeches. Let's see. Somebody put something in the chat. Whoop. Well, let me stop sharing for a second because it won't let me look at it. Oh, you're fine, Alexis. I'm so sorry. You can, I was going to say, you don't have to stay because that sounds traumatic. If you yeah, I can let you, yeah, I'll email you afterwards if you want. Sorry about that. Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. Okay. So we're going to go back, y'all. Okay. So anyway, he always tries to empower people now to talk about, right, it doesn't have anything to do with your intelligence, that you have this intellectual disability, right, with your speech that you can't control. So again, tries to encourage empathy, tries to encourage other people to think about other people, to talk respectfully, which is ironic, right, with what I was talking about earlier, that maybe some choices he's made in the past. But again, he always credits his mom with not letting his stutter define him. All right. So those are two people who have kind of overcome, created solutions around their speech impediments, their differentiations. So that is part A of discussion board number 11. If you are taking notes, Now we are going to go to part B. So part B, also during the inauguration, there were other things going on other than fashion and people who are overcoming struggles. There was a couple of liberal politicians that day who made a great deal of news, and I know there were a million memes about one of them you will probably be familiar with now. Bernie Sanders, right, with his mittens and his jacket, because he had run for president before and didn't get it several times, right? So people were saying, oh, he's like pouting and he's sitting in the corner with his jacket on. He didn't dress up. And I love Bernie Sanders. I don't care what they say. But you know, it came out that he had these mittens on that somebody in his community had given him. And he was like, oh, well, nobody should care about what fashion is anyway right now. We need to worry about economy and all this different things and making America have minimum wage go up and all of those. So another person that day who was usually pretty iconic with liberal politicians, right, is Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was notably absent during the inauguration. So instead of showing up and kind of glorifying the inauguration like a lot of people did, they had other priorities. So Bernie Sanders was there, right? But he's not going to like dress up and be all fashionable. That's not his style anyway. So we're going to peruse kind of a couple of different sources to see what they were up to that day, what they were prioritizing. Another thing that he had in his hand, everybody interviewed and asked him what it was like a manila folder. And they were like, oh, he brought like notes to take to the post office to mail to change some policy or something. So we're going to talk about some of those pieces. All right. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on the inaugural day, she actually did not go because she was helping to participate in a strike with unions. So she was leading the call in the streets with these workers, essential workers, right? During the pandemic, they were trying to fight for decent pay. They were trying to, right, fight for good working conditions during the pandemic. So she was definitely present there. She was all over social media, she and Bernie Sanders expressing solidarity with these essential workers. It was specifically at Hunts Point Terminal Produce Market in the Bronx. And so a lot of the workers who were protesting for their civil rights about work conditions and pay, they were actually arrested, and they were wanting hazard pay, right, during the pandemic because they were considered essential workers, but they were not getting essential worker pay, hazard pay, during the ongoing pandemic. So Bernie Sanders and she both spoke up, both went to protest or were sharing protests, getting the word out about it. And so Bernie Sanders, always an advocate about workers' rights, about minimum wage. Nobody ever agrees with him about raising the minimum wage, but he's been saying it consistently for years. So he said essential workers' rights should not have to go on strike for decent pay, and no worker should be threatened for exercising constitutional rights. And he said he strongly supported those Teamsters who were on strike for their struggle for justice. And they were demanding a $1 raise. And then Ocasio-Cortez, she also said she would just see them there. So again, she went to the demonstration, to the protest, instead of attending the inaugural ceremony. And she was, right, raising awareness for it, going and participating as well. So at that Hunts Point strike for the workers, the essential workers, at that produce market. So they had been right on strike for several days, and all of the people arrested right on the picket lines, they had been blocking traffic and different things. But again, continual awareness was being raised by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So let's move on to the next part. Again, she was there right with them, protesting, and again, sharing social media posts about it to get the word out again for the essential workers to get the dollar raise and to get rights, working at that market and raising awareness for the people who had been arrested trying to protest for their civil rights, blocking traffic and different things. Also saying that they needed health care, right, because they were being forced to work during the corona pandemic. All right, so let's go to the next piece. So again, what I was talking about, even though everybody tried to make a joke or a meme, I mean, I know y'all had to see like the millions of memes of Bernie Sanders, like with every potential comedy thing ever, right? Him in Friends on the couch, or him like in Blackish episodes in the background of somebody's house, everywhere. They had him on like the Batman building in Nashville, all this stuff. But every interview he did after this day, everybody kept trying to bring that up, and he was like, nope. And so he actually posted it on his own social media and said, fashion, like a question mark, let's get to work. And so let's hear a little bit about what he said in the interview with Gail quickly.
People are loving your gloves. Do you want to talk to us about your attire today? What you had in mind?
$2,000 per adult. That's what the Senate has got to do. That's what the American people want us to do.
So again, he's always gonna like flip, right, the trending stuff. He's like, I don't want to talk about fashion. I don't want to talk about like memes. He's like, let's talk about the economy. And now, of course, he's over the economy. He gave up like one of his roles he was supposed to have in the White House to actually lead and not break up the Democrat versus Republicans 50-50. So he was saying, right, we didn't get $2,000, but that's what he was pushing for. And he's always pushing for raising minimum wage and things like that. So he's kind of using his trending meme that he could have hopped on the bandwagon with everybody else and joked about and was like, nope, we're still going to talk about the economy. So that was what he was prioritizing. Instead, he and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also protesting and helping get awareness out for those essential workers at the market. All right. Let's see. So also then on top of that, he started getting people to talk about the small business female owner who had made him the gloves, and right, just got the word out about her instead of himself and all the memes. So but again, if you did not see them or if you were like, I guess, under a rock or whatever, these are some of them. Game of Thrones. Just every single thing. People had nails done with him. Shining. I don't know what this is. The Bachelor. Definitely don't watch that. Star Trek. Anyway, he was definitely a meme. It was trending. So, all right. So that is part A and part B of your discussion board number 11. A lot of people do not agree with unions. A lot of people say, right, naysayers don't agree with AOC or Bernie Sanders for supporting that. And they say it can cause inflation and other things, right? So you just always have to think of both perspectives. But that is what they were more focused on Inauguration Day, other than fashion or going to the celebration and going to all the concerts and fireworks and stuff afterwards. All right. So we got done a little bit early with that part. So it is 7:34. So let's say 7:35. So I'm going to give you a break basically from 7:35 to 7:40. And then you can immediately, so it's top of mind, fresh on your brain, start your discussion board number 11 from 7:40 for 30 minutes. So go ahead and take a 5-minute break and then start discussion board number 11. All right, so if you were taking a break, go ahead and come back and go ahead and get started on discussion board number 11. You have from 7:40 until 8:10 to work on discussion board number 11 on the content that we just talked about. Right, let's go ahead and come back and wrap things up. So I know you might not have got entirely done with discussion board 11. Hopefully you got a good start on it. And discussion board 10, it looked like most people got done. There was like 1, 2, 3 people who still hadn't posted yet, but for the most part, it looks like people are getting done. I was going to have you read this passage together from your text, but for whatever reason on Cengage, when I look at it's like a broken link through their book. So I'm not actually going to make you read that text. So hooray, if you don't want to read anything right now, I understand. But the text was about proposals, what we should do with plastic bags. So I know we've been talking a lot now about disability. And then tonight in your discussion boards, at least, you talked about in discussion board 11, like about politics and about different proposals people try to do, right, with protesting for workers' rights, for talking about economy, wages, all these different things. So let's think about the environment for a little bit. What are some things that you think are important about the environment that we could change or fix that are definitely continually broken or an issue?
Obviously, like trash disposal.
Mm-hmm.
Recycle.
Yeah, recycling. I know some trash companies, right? They'll charge you for recycling pickup, but then I've literally seen them in our neighborhood like throw it in the same thing. And I'm like, are they even doing it? I hate that. We like maybe are nerdy, but we like take everything to the dump and put it all in there ourselves. So it's kind
And
of
it used to be real big, and it kind of fell off by the wayside.
I know. I think people just like it's not their priority anymore, and it's like, oh, it's not my earth, or I'm not gonna have to live with it, you know, beyond a certain amount of decades, so they don't care so much. What other environmental issues do y'all think are problems that you might could propose solutions to, or just hope people would care about them and change little slight things they do on a daily basis?
Kind of going hand in hand with like trash is like water pollution.
Yeah. So that is one of the things that we were going to talk about in terms of this, right? This article, what it was supposed to be that I was going to get y'all to read. It's an annotated proposal policy, which again, it was to show you originally what a proposal essay should look like, outlined and everything. But basically, this New York governor had proposed a bill that would charge a fee, 5 cents for every disposable shopping bag in New York. Basically, right, trying to eliminate plastic bags, trying to get people to use kind of, I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with Aldi, where you take your own bags and boxes. I know we go there too, right? So you're there not using plastic bags like Walmart. And I know used to, when I was younger, they would have those brown paper sacks at like Winn-Dixie's and Food Worlds. That shows how old I am. But anyway, or maybe where I'm from. So yeah, but again, a lot of people don't care, right? And so they still use plastic bags. We even like recycle bags for like our cat litter. So you know how people pay those like crazy amounts of money for those little blue bags to go get their dog's restroom and everything. So you can recycle or reuse bags too for other things, instead of just disposing them, putting them in my brain is dying. I can tell at the end of the night. The giant heaps of trash. What am I trying? The dumps. So yeah, America is one of the worst countries, right? With these giant dumps, and then people don't seem to care too much about using all of these items, right, that are disposable, not eating so much at home. I know that's also part of privilege though, so you can't judge so much when people are like using ramen and, you know, those little cups of soup and everything, because they don't have time to go home and cook a 3-course meal every night or whatever. So I understand some of it is for convenience and literally, right, economic issues.
May I say something?
Sorry, go ahead.
I do believe we should be more eco-friendly, but I remember one time I was trying to get like an eco-friendly bag and it cost like $180. Being like healthy and eco-friendly, I feel like the prices shouldn't be that high. That's another reason why people can't do it. It's too high, because not everyone out here rich.
Right. That is definitely the case. That's why I was saying, like, Aldi, they have, I think they're like 50 cents or something, but you get like whatever, 5 or 6
Yeah, we
of
go
those.
to Aldi's.
Yeah. But definitely some of them get very bougie, very expensive, very pricey. So I definitely understand that. That's why I was saying, like, don't judge people too harshly about disposable, right, things that they buy to eat and throw away quickly, right? Because it is also about economy. Okay. So a part of this, right, with environment and proposing solutions to it that we are going to do, since the Cengage book would not open. I have like the old school book, but y'all can't very well read a book in my hand. So we are going to look at a couple of videos about some environmental solutions, proposals that people have made, and then I'm going to let you all free. You are supposed to have homework where you read chapter 10 to get you prepared for the last unit evaluation, but we are going to postpone that to next week when you actually get your last essay. So you will not have any further homework other than discussion board 10 and 11 that you either already finished or got a good start on, hopefully. Okay, Aaron, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something. I was just curious. So I searched it up. Apparently, Canada is the worst country in the world for trash.
Wow.
Having 36.1 metric tons per capita and an annual waste total of 1,325,000,000 blah 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 metric tons of waste every year.
Everybody always says Canada is perfect. I do like Canada, but you know, just to pick at them. All right. So I would not have thought that either. Stereotyped Canada is the largest waste.
And just one more thing to further that, it's pretty crazy because I'm pretty sure the U.S. has like 10 times their population.
Yeah, that is bad. Yeah, they're very sparse populated there. It's just lots and lots of trees and. Okay. So let's go to watch the 2 videos that I was talking about, and then y'all can be set free. So the first one, I don't know if you've ever heard of something called the plastiki. Has anyone ever heard of that? Okay, well, we're going to learn about it tonight, and it's something someone created as a proposal to fix a solution to garbage, excess plastic in the oceans, or to more so draw attention, acknowledgement of it, and bring more attention to fixing the problem that people don't care about that much.
The plastiki basically started as an idea after I was kind of captivated by this article, which was all about the fragility of our deep oceans and the accumulation of plastics in our deep oceans. Back in June of 2006, the United Nations released this report. And I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, why is nobody talking about plastics in our oceans? And that's where the whole idea of, sort of turning waste into a resource came about. And it was sort of quite the evolution from there, to the point where we're now constructing a boat made out of what's considered to be waste and what we would say is actually a resource. The first thing that people have always said to me and asked me is, why don't we just melt these down and then mold the hull out of the plastic bottles? But I've always felt that it's far more impactful and powerful to actually be able to see this.
We needed to figure out a way of making them strong, making them structural and rigid enough to perform a function in the boat, and realized very early on that we needed to pressurize them. Casting around for ideas, I thought of putting dry ice, carbon dioxide, compressed carbon dioxide gas into the bottles. So we had to then just refine it really and figure out exactly how much gas to put in to give us the right pressure. The boat is a catamaran, so two hulls. So you'd have these two star-shaped hulls with bottles packed around the outsides, and then they'd be joined in the middle by two beams, and then you'd have a kind of a platform in the middle.
So this is the prototype. It's really, to be honest with you, it's completely unrepresentative of the boat. The only thing vaguely, really to focus on is the bottles. And this was about how it would sail.
Now, we got reasonable speeds out of it, not like a Hobie Cat, but for the weight and for the sail area, it wasn't too bad. And my guess is that the boat will probably move along quite happily around 8 knots, which is plenty for what they're trying to do. If they can take this out to sea and do 200 miles regularly every day, then that's perfectly adequate.
This is SRPT, so you can see it's a fabric, a woven fabric. And the idea is that you apply heat and pressure to it. So this material here is a PET foam. So again, it's made out of the same material as bottles. So what we do is, in order to make the panels that we need for the boat, we apply this fabric to the outside on both sides, and then apply the heat and pressure. And then that gives us our rigid panel. So you can see how bendy and flexible that is without the plastic on the outside. And then you can see this is a finished panel, which is absolutely stiff and rigid and suitable for use in the boat.
A regular boat hull is like a giant beam, and it doesn't want to twist, because to twist it's got to break every junction between each panel. Now, what we've done is we've taken all the structure that the regular boat has and then taken the skin away. So we've taken the part away that actually makes it stiff. So that's the issue.
Everything on this boat will be made out of PET in some form or other, whether it's in the form of a bottle, whether it's in the form of a panel, this SRPT, it will all be the same material. And what's nice about that is that we can upcycle or recycle this whole boat.
Our plan is basically out here, we'll sail down to San Diego to Scripps, come into Hawaii, up into Midway, cross into probably Wake, down into Bikini, and then work our way through these islands across down in Sydney. It looks big just because the map's big. It's really very small.
All right. So again, what do you think their purpose was for creating that, other than to get plastic bottles out of the ocean?
They were using it to make panels for the boats to sail. Mm-hmm. By creating this fabric, putting them over this fabric over them and condensing them down with heat and pressure to make a panel in order for the boat to be able to sail in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's also,
all right, go ahead, Aaron.
It's kind of a proof of concept that's like what you can do, like you can make this with it. Well, what else can you make?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not only like what else can they make, but they were also just, like he said, people were saying, why don't you just melt this down, right? Melt the plastic down to make the whole of the boat. And he's like, no, I actually want people to see, right, that this is something that's been disposed of in a wrong way in the ocean that's affecting the environment and creatures, right? And so we've taken it out of the ocean, and now we're literally going to make something useful out of it and sail it around to show awareness of the need for environmental friendliness and recycling and not throwing waste in the ocean. All right. So part of that, again, a lot of people are not as familiar with. Some people have heard about it now, but the Pacific garbage patch, right, are literally these huge patches of garbage in our ocean. So this other guy, we're going to watch the video for quickly. He actually swam through the garbage pit in the ocean. So let's see about this.
Swimming across the Pacific, it's not really something that I needed to do. It's something that I wanted to do, something that I had in mind for a long time. For me, it kind of brings some type of calm and very close to the environment.
When long-distance swimmer Ben LeConte left Hawaii in June this year, his goal was simple: swim the Pacific while drawing attention to the problem of plastic pollution.
What is very unique and different here is, in addition to bringing valid and important samples and data, we take people below the surface. It's not just about scratching the surface, it's also below the surface.
The research expedition would take Ben and his crew directly through the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
The patch is located between Oregon and Hawaii. It's the region in the world's ocean that has the highest concentration of plastic. It's not an island. It's basically a soup where you find very high concentration of floating plastic.
Created by a swirling vortex of ocean currents, the plastic patch is estimated to be roughly 1.6 million square kilometers. That's about 3 times the size of France. Ben spent between 3 to 8 hours in the water every day.
The advantage we had with the swim is Ben and the crew, they were navigating and swimming at a very slow pace. So we had this fantastic opportunity of sampling at very high resolution.
I'm going to show you how we do science on this boat. It's not an easy lab to work with.
Daily sampling was done using a net tow that would skim the water for microplastics. The crew would then meticulously count what they caught.
Overnight, we crossed some invisible border that we couldn't see below the surface. And all of a sudden, we have a net tow of 700 pieces of microplastic. So much plastic, it's hard to wrap your head around.
For me, it's a very powerful way of using science because plastic pollution is a huge issue. But if we don't know about it, if we don't see what is out there, it's really hard to get this message out to the public.
After 80 days at sea and swimming 338 nautical miles, the Golden Gate Bridge provided the perfect backdrop for Ben's arrival in San Francisco.
Now that I did it, it's even crazier than I expected.
Celebrating their return to dry land and the completion of one of the longest field studies of ocean microplastics, Ben and his crew acknowledged there was still much more work to be done.
1, 2, 3.
I hope that people will get inspired and realize that it's responsible that each one of us has to carry, and we have the power to make a decision in our daily life to change a little bit. So we don't have to be perfect about it, but we have to start to do something.
All right. So again, you got to see 2 proposals, right, with environmental issues that people came up with to draw attention to, and hopefully some accountability, responsibility for humanity to not be perfect, like you said, but possibly alter, if they can, how much plastic they're using, pollution, recycling they're doing, things like that. So again, tonight, you hopefully mostly got done with discussion board 10 and 11. You were originally supposed to have discussion board 12, but I cut that. So you do not have homework, as it said, other than if you didn't get finished with 10 and 11. So get both of those done before next Wednesday. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next Wednesday.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.